Let me shock you with something most people never understand. The narcissist is not fearless. In fact, they are terrified, deeply, chronically, obsessively terrified. And the three things they fear most: exposure, loss of control, and your emotional freedom. If this is resonating with you, if you've seen this pattern in your own life, pause for a moment and ask yourself, where am I still feeding their fear by reacting? And if you're ready to reclaim your power, stay with me. Because once you understand what they fear, you stop fearing them. The first thing the narcissist is terrified of is exposure, and this fear runs far deeper than simple embarrassment. Exposure for them means being seen without the mask. It means someone recognizing that the confidence is inflated, the superiority is compensatory, and the charm is strategic. At the core of narcissism is a fragile, unstable sense of self that cannot tolerate scrutiny. The grandiosity is not just ego, it is armor. When you begin to question inconsistencies, when you calmly point out contradictions, when you refuse to participate in their inflated narrative, you are not just disagreeing with them, you are threatening the structure that keeps their identity intact. This is why their reactions can seem disproportionate. A simple observation can trigger defensiveness, rage, or sudden cold withdrawal. When you say, "That's not what happened," or "That hurt me," they do not hear feedback. They hear exposure. They experience it as humiliation, even if no one else is present. The possibility that someone might see their insecurity, their envy, or their dependency on validation creates intense internal panic. Instead of reflecting, they deflect. Instead of taking responsibility, they project. Instead of engaging in dialogue, they gaslight. Exposure also threatens their social image. Narcissists curate how they are perceived: competent, generous, powerful, desirable. If you begin to speak openly about manipulation, inconsistencies, or emotional cruelty, they may launch a smear campaign, not because they are calm and calculated in strength, but because they are scrambling to protect the facade. Control of the narrative becomes survival. What makes exposure so destabilizing is that it touches the very wound they are trying to outrun: the deep fear of being inadequate or unworthy. They cannot integrate flaws into their self-concept in a healthy way, so when someone sees the cracks, it feels like annihilation. That is why staying grounded, calm, and factual around a narcissist can unsettle them more than yelling ever could, because clarity quietly dismantles illusion. The second thing the narcissist is terrified of is loss of control. Control is not just something they prefer, it is how they regulate their internal chaos. When they control the narrative, the emotional tone, the pace of the relationship, and even your reactions, they feel stable. The illusion of superiority depends on managing how others respond to them. If they can predict you, trigger you, or silence you, they feel powerful. But the moment that control begins to slip, their anxiety spikes. Control shows up in subtle and overt ways. It may look like interrupting you, dismissing your feelings, rewriting events, or making decisions without consulting you. It can appear as charm that steers conversations, guilt that pressures compliance, or anger that shuts down disagreement. All of it serves the same purpose: to maintain dominance over the emotional environment. When you react strongly by defending, arguing, or trying to prove your point, you are still participating in their system. They may seem agitated, but internally they feel reassured because they are still directing the emotional dance. The real disruption happens when you stop playing. when you set a boundary and do not over-explain, when you respond with calm neutrality instead of emotion, when you say no and do not justify it. That is when they feel the ground shift. They may escalate, provoke, or attempt to reassert dominance through criticism or affection. These swings are not random, they are attempts to regain footing. Loss of control threatens their identity as the central figure in the relationship. If they cannot influence your mood, your choices, or your perception of them, they feel insignificant. And insignificance is intolerable to someone whose self-worth is externally constructed. Your autonomy becomes a mirror they do not want to face. It reflects that you are separate, sovereign, and not easily manipulated. That independence exposes the limits of their power, and nothing unsettles a narcissist more than realizing they are not in charge of you. The third thing the narcissist is terrified of is your emotional freedom. Not your anger, not your tears, not even your hatred, your freedom. Because as long as you are emotionally entangled, hurt, confused, trying to understand, trying to fix, trying to be heard, you are still connected to them. And connection, even negative connection, feeds their sense of relevance and power. Emotional freedom means you no longer look to them for validation. It means their praise doesn't inflate you and their criticism doesn't dismantle you. It means you stop chasing closure, stop needing them to admit wrongdoing, stop hoping they will suddenly become self-aware. When you detach emotionally, you remove the emotional supply that sustains their ego. And to a narcissist, that feels like disappearance. This is why indifference unsettles them more than conflict. If you argue, they can still provoke you. If you cry, they can still affect you. If you plead, they can still control the outcome. But when you become calm, self-contained, and unreactive, there is nothing for them to grip. Your silence becomes louder than any confrontation. Your lack of engagement communicates that they are no longer central to your emotional world. Often, when they sense this shift, they intensify their behavior. They may attempt to hoover you back with charm, apologies, or nostalgia, or they may lash out with cruelty, insults, or sudden coldness. These reactions are attempts to trigger you, to pull you back into emotional responsiveness. Because if they can make you feel something strongly enough, they can reassure themselves that they still matter. Your healing represents a loss they cannot control. You are no longer orbiting them. You are no longer defined by their approval or rejection. And that autonomy confronts their deepest insecurity, that without constant emotional reactions from others, they might have to sit alone with themselves. The fourth thing the narcissist is terrified of is accountability. True accountability, not the performative apology, not the temporary charm offensive, not the "I'm sorry you feel that way." Real accountability requires self-reflection, ownership of harm, and a willingness to tolerate shame without collapsing into defensiveness. And that is precisely what their psychological structure struggles to handle. At the core of narcissism is a fragile self-concept that cannot easily integrate fault. When confronted with evidence of wrongdoing, most psychologically healthy people may feel discomfort, guilt, or regret, but they can metabolize it. A narcissist experiences that same confrontation as a threat to their entire identity. If they admit they were wrong, even in a small way, it destabilizes the grandiose image they work so hard to maintain. So instead of accountability, you get deflection. Instead of responsibility, you get blame shifting. You may notice how quickly the conversation turns. You bring up a specific behavior, and suddenly you are being accused of overreacting. You point out a broken promise, and now your past mistakes are dragged into the present. This is not random, it is strategic self-protection. If they can dilute the focus, confuse the timeline, or provoke you into emotional intensity, they can avoid the unbearable weight of admitting fault. Accountability also implies consequences. It suggests that behavior has impact and that impact matters. For someone accustomed to bending rules, manipulating narratives, or avoiding repercussions through charm or intimidation, consequences feel like loss of power. And loss of power feels intolerable, so they may escalate, deny, or even rewrite reality to protect themselves from that reckoning. When you remain steady, factual, and unwilling to accept distortion, it heightens their anxiety. You are holding a mirror they do not want to look into. Your insistence on clarity disrupts the protective illusion, and that disruption forces them to confront something they spend their lives avoiding, the possibility that they are not always right, not always superior, and not immune to responsibility. The fifth thing the narcissist is terrified of is indifference. Not anger, not confrontation, indifference, because anger still acknowledges their importance. Conflict still positions them at the center of your emotional world, but indifference quietly removes them from that position altogether. A narcissist thrives on reaction. Positive or negative does not matter as much as intensity. Admiration feeds their grandiosity. Fear reinforces their dominance. Even your frustration can be twisted into proof that they have power over you. As long as you are emotionally activated, they feel significant. You are responding, engaging, orbiting. That emotional charge becomes a form of supply. Indifference, however, offers nothing to feed on. When you respond with neutrality, when your tone is flat and your energy is self-contained, there is no emotional hook. You are no longer trying to prove yourself, defend yourself, or change them. You are simply unmoved. And that lack of movement can feel profoundly destabilizing to someone who depends on external reactions to regulate their sense of worth. This is why, when indifference appears, they often escalate. They may attempt to provoke you with criticism, jealousy tactics, or sudden drama. If that fails, they might switch to charm, nostalgia, or vulnerability. The goal is the same: evoke a response, because a response reassures them that they still matter. Silence does not. Indifference also communicates something they cannot tolerate, that you no longer see them as extraordinary. You are not dazzled. You are not intimidated. You are not wounded in a way that keeps you tethered. You are simply done. That quiet detachment can feel like erasure to someone who needs to feel central and impactful. When you reach a place where their praise does not elevate you and their insults do not diminish you, you step outside their psychological arena. And once you are outside it, their usual strategies lose force. That loss of emotional leverage is not just uncomfortable for them, it is terrifying. The sixth thing the narcissist is terrified of is genuine emotional intimacy. On the surface, this may seem confusing because narcissists often move quickly into intense declarations, dramatic bonding, and what feels like deep connection. But intensity is not intimacy. Intensity can be performance. Intimacy requires vulnerability, consistency, empathy, and mutuality, and those are far more threatening. True intimacy means being known in an unfiltered way. It means allowing another person to see insecurity without converting it into superiority, to see fear without disguising it as anger, to see need without manipulating for control. For someone organized around a fragile, defended self, that kind of exposure feels dangerous. Vulnerability risks rejection, and rejection confirms the very inadequacy they are trying to outrun. So instead of intimacy, they often create fast attachment. They mirror your values, your dreams, your wounds. They share selectively, sometimes even dramatically, to create a sense of closeness. But when the relationship begins to require emotional reciprocity, when you expect accountability, empathy, or sustained care, they may withdraw, become critical, or manufacture conflict. The deeper the connection becomes, the more it threatens their defensive structure. Intimacy also requires seeing the other person as separate and equal. That equality disrupts their need for hierarchy. If you are truly autonomous with your own emotional depth and boundaries, then you cannot be fully controlled, and control is their comfort zone. Mutuality feels uncertain. Dominance feels safer. When you ask for emotional presence, not gifts, not grand gestures, but consistency and honesty, you may notice discomfort. They might accuse you of being too needy, too sensitive, or too demanding. These accusations often mask their own inability to tolerate closeness without feeling exposed. The paradox is that many narcissists crave connection, but only on terms that protect their ego. Real intimacy requires surrendering the mask, and surrendering the mask means risking the discovery that beneath it, they are simply human, flawed, uncertain, and not invulnerable. The seventh thing the narcissist is terrified of is aging and irrelevance. Narcissism is deeply tied to external validation, admiration, attention, status, desirability. These are not pleasant additions to their identity. They are structural supports. When youth, beauty, power, or influence begin to shift, as they inevitably do with time, it can trigger profound insecurity. For many narcissists, identity is built around being exceptional, the smartest, the most attractive, the most successful, the most desired. Aging threatens that hierarchy. It introduces comparison they may not win. It introduces younger, more admired competitors. It introduces physical and social changes that cannot be fully controlled. And for someone whose self-worth depends on standing above others, this shift feels destabilizing. You may notice increased sensitivity around appearance, career achievements, or social relevance. There may be exaggerated efforts to maintain youthfulness, status symbols, or associations with admired people. If admiration decreases, irritability can increase. Criticism becomes less tolerable. Small slights feel amplified. The fear underneath is not simply about wrinkles or time passing. It is about fading significance. Irrelevance is particularly threatening because narcissistic supply often fluctuates with life stages. If their social environment changes, retirement, career setbacks, relationship breakdowns, the steady stream of validation may slow. Without that external reinforcement, they are left more directly with themselves, and that internal landscape may feel empty or unstable. This fear can also manifest in how they treat others. They may compete with younger colleagues, belittle emerging talent, or seek partners who reinforce their desirability. The goal is to counteract the creeping anxiety that they are no longer the center of attention. Aging is a universal human experience. Most people adapt by finding meaning beyond surface-level validation. But for someone whose identity is built on admiration and superiority, the natural passage of time feels like a slow erosion of the very foundation they rely on. The eighth thing the narcissist is terrified of is your healing and detachment. Not your anger, not your heartbreak, not even your confrontation, your healing. Because healing changes the dynamic permanently. When you begin to understand the patterns, when you name the manipulation, when you stop personalizing their behavior, you step out of the psychological trap that once kept you entangled. At first, they may not notice the shift. You are still present, still communicating, but something is different. You are calmer. You do not over-explain. You do not rush to fix misunderstandings that were never misunderstandings to begin with. You start responding instead of reacting. And that subtle emotional regulation is deeply unsettling to someone who once relied on your reactivity. Healing also means you stop chasing closure. You stop waiting for the apology that will never come in authentic form. You stop trying to prove your worth. That withdrawal of effort can feel like rejection to them, not because they valued the mutuality, but because they valued the control embedded in your pursuit. When you no longer seek their validation, you remove the invisible thread that kept you tethered. Detachment communicates independence. It says, without drama, that your emotional well-being no longer hinges on their behavior. And for a narcissist, that is a loss of influence. They may test you, sudden messages, nostalgic memories, subtle provocations, trying to measure whether the door is still open. If you remain steady, it confirms what they fear most. You are no longer psychologically available. Your healing forces them to confront a reality they avoid, that their tactics are not universally effective, that their charm is not irresistible, that their control has limits. When you detach, you are not attacking them. You are simply choosing yourself, and in doing so, you dismantle the very dynamic that once gave them power over you.